Hello and welcome to session 2, which is about following the narrative and lines of argument for your functional skills speaking, listening, English level 2. So let's get into this. I'm going to share my screen and we can see we are here. Session 2, 2.2, follow the narrative and lines of argument. So again, same as before, you've got kind of the session aims here. We've got our PowerPoint here. We've got some bits and pieces here to go through. We'll have our worksheet there if you wanted the worksheet to help summarize what you've learned. And then again, there's extended reading beyond the classroom. So let's bring up the presentation and we can start. Bear with me. Right. So mastering the art of storytelling. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? Let's just click there. So we're going to highlight key points and again, follow narrative. So let's have a look at this. Introduction, why it's important to highlight or why highlight main points is important, how to highlight main points, different contexts and situations, storytelling, presentation, instruction, sequence, tips for recounting a narrative in sequences, using video and audio, the power of visual, using visual effectively, the importance of timing, tips for timing your narrative, the role around or the role of emotion, tips for conveying emotion in your narrative, the power of voice, tips for using your voice effectively, the importance of practice, tips for practicing your narrative, question and answers, additional information, thank you, and a summary. So let's just start off with, welcome to this presentation, effectively highlighting the main points in a narrative. So in a conversation, what's the main points? Whether you're giving a presentation, whether you're telling a story, or whether you're giving instructions, it is important to know how to emphasize the key takeaways. By doing so, you can ensure that your audience has fully understood and remember the most important aspects of your message. Throughout this presentation, we will explore various tips and techniques for highlighting main points in different contexts and situations, from storytelling to presentations to giving instructions. We'll cover it all. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn some valuable skills in effective communication. So, why highlight main points is important? Also, why highlighting main points is important. Come Steve, we'll get it right. Highlighting main points is crucial in any narrative as it helps the audience to understand and remember the key takeaway. So imagine reading a book without a chapter, title or heading. It would be difficult to follow the storyline and comprehend the author's message. Similarly, in a presentation or speech, highlighting main points ensures that the audience stays engaged and focused on the most important information. Moreover, remember what we said in the other session, transition words. So moreover, highlighting main points can also help simplify complex ideas and make it more accessible to break down the narrative into its essential components, and you can communicate your message more clearly and effectively. For example, transition. If you're given a talk about climate change, you might highlight the main points of rising temperature, melting ice caps, and sea level rises to convey the urgency and the severity of your issue. Now, if you remembered the last session, we talked about the beginning, the middle, and the end. And this middle bit is about your primary sources of information. So making sure that you're using data to convey your message quickly. And we talked about that in the previous session. So how to highlight the main points? Well, when it comes to highlighting main points in a narrative, there are several techniques you can use. One effective method is to use repetition. We already know that. Repeat, repeat, repeat. So this can be used. One effective method is to use repetition by repeating key phrases through ideas throughout your story. It can help emphasize the importance and make them more memorable for the audience. So again, the voice, the pace, the tone, it all makes it interesting for people to listen to. Another technique is to use visual aids such as charts, graphs, and images. This can help to illustrate your key point, as you can see on the screen, and it can make it easy to understand. So just be sure to choose visuals that are relevant to the story and don't distract from your message. So different contexts and situations. So recounting a narrative is essential for various contexts and situations. For example, when you're trying to persuade somebody, telling a story can help them understand the main points better. And I do that quite a lot. I digress and I give a real life story, because when you give that real life story, you're breaking away from the reading on the screen, you're breaking away from what you're trying to do, and you're just giving it life, you're giving it meaning and purpose. And people latch on to the story. They remember those bits because they become the most interesting bits. So just bear that in mind. Excuse me, I'm full of a cold at the moment as well. So be mindful of that. And again, you can use your teaching, or so you can use teaching or a new concept by giving examples. This can make it easier for your audience to grasp. And again, the other one that we use quite a lot are metaphors. And a metaphor is when you're trying to give a scenario or a story to convey a message. So, for example, in mental health, we tend to say, look, your mood is like the sky. There's the constant blue you, which is your normal mood. Then the clouds come over. That's the feeling of being low, anxious, or depression, but they should just shift on. And then you go back to the blue sky, back to you. And your feelings are like clouds, they should move. And that helps people visualize that. But what depression is the clouds come together. And when clouds come together, it causes a storm. However, all storms eventually break up and the clouds then make on their merry way. So using a metaphor, giving that visualization, helps the person fully grasp the story and the narrative and try to understand what it is you're trying to create. Moreover, recounting a narrative can be a useful social situation as well. Sharing personal stories can help build conversations and foster empathy. So again, it's that connection of feeling. So listening to somebody, trying to hang on to every word that they're saying, can be really powerful for persuading people, and then again, passing through knowledge. So storytelling is a powerful tool for recounting a narrative. It follows, it allows the audience to attach onto an emotional level, to hear the story, and it becomes more memorable. So people like the stories. It allows us to listen and follow on and understand the message. By using a vivid language and description and detail, can transport our listeners to another time and place, making them feel that they're part of the story. In addition to being engaged in storytelling, storytelling can also be an effective way to convey complex information. So by presenting information in a format of a story, we can make it easier for the audience to understand and remember. For example, instead of simply listing the benefits of a product, we can use a story about how the product transforms somebody's life. So if we think about sales and marketing there. Presentation. So looking at the presentations. In presentations, recounting the narrative can help engage your audience and make your message more memorable. By telling a story that illustrates the main points, you can create an emotional connection with your listeners and help them better understand and remember the information you are presenting. Furthermore, connections, transition words. Furthermore, using visuals such as charts, graphs, and images can help support your narrative to make the presentation more engaging. Visuals can help break up the text-heavy slides and provide visual representation to your message, making it easier for the audience to understand and remember. Instructions. So, when we give instructions, and again, I always think of when I say to somebody, oh, how do I get to somewhere? And they just give me a whole list of instructions. Mind blown. But instructions, when given instructions, it's important to recount a narrative to provide context and clarity. By telling a story, you can imagine the audience and making the instructions more memorable. For example, if you're teaching somebody how to cook a specific dish, you could start by describing the first time you tried to make the recipe and what mistakes you made. This not only makes the instructions more interesting, but helps the listener understand the purpose behind each step. And there's a wonderful phrase here: tell me what you do, tell me why you do it. If you tell me what you're doing and tell me why you're doing it, I'm more likely to remember it because you'll give me the story, the narrative behind what I need to be doing. So tell me what you do, tell me why you're doing it. Re-encounter a narrative can also help you anticipate questions or confusions. This may arise during the instruction process. By telling a story, you can address potential issues before they happened and ensure your instructions are clear and concise. So sequence then, when recounting a narrative, it's important to do so in sequence. This means that you're going through the event in order as they occurred, rather than jumping back and forth. And I can quite honestly say, when I started my essay writing back in 2014 when I went to uni, the first thing that I got into trouble with was regarding my essay structure and sequencing. So it's important to make sure that when you do your sequence, you do that correctly so you don't confuse people. Excuse me, I had to stop there. I had to sneeze a bit. Right, okay, so where were we? We're on sequencing. So for example, if you're telling a story or a roadmap, it would make more sense to start at the beginning. So you go through the trip and go through each day in order, rather than starting at a funny anecdote from the middle of the trip and then jump back to the beginning by re-encountering the events in sequence. You can create a clearer picture for your audience to make a narrative more engaging. So as I was saying, something that I do quite a lot is lots of storytelling, and it's useful because you can create a real visual for people to understand, and especially when you're trying to convey a really important message, and doing it in order really helps kind of then process some of that information that we're saying. And as I was saying, when I did my essay writing, I used to get in trouble all the time and be like, see, this is a great essay, but you're jumping around. It just needs to flow a bit better. So again, if we think about an order of a presentation, we want to capture them straight away. So here's some really hard facts about something. Great, and this is where the evidence comes from, and this is why we're doing it, and this is what we're hoping to achieve by it, and here's my recommendations. So if you think about the structure of a presentation, it's no different to the structure of an essay or the structure of an answer to a question. You expect it to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So top tips for recounting a narrative in a sequence. So when recounting a narrative in sequence, it's important to start at the beginning, move in a chronological order, so step by step, through the events that took place. It helps the audience to follow along and understand the progression of the story. One technique is to recount a narrative in sequence in using transitional phrases, so between events such as after that, meanwhile, or later on. This helps connect the different parts of the story and to keep the audience engaged. So using video and audio can be powerful tools when reconnecting a narrative. It can help bring the story to life and encourage the audience on multiple levels. So again, if we just think about our learning styles, some of us learn better through seeing, some of us learn better through hearing, some of us learn better through doing. So if you have a bit of everything going on, you're going to be more inclusive. So for example, a video can show a character emotion. They can have the facial expression, the body language, while an audio could encourage the mood and a sense, music or sound effects. These elements can work together and create a more immersive experience for the audience. So when we think about, let's for example, Harry Potter, the moment we hear that that sound just immerses us in there. We can all see that lightning bolt. We can all, we can all just think of a Harry Potter phrase or something that comes in. So the power of visuals, are incredible, powerful tools when it comes to re-encountering a narrative. They have the ability to convey complex information quickly and effectively and can help engage and captivate audiences. For example, if you imagine a presentation on a history of comic books, by incorporating the visuals such as images of iconic comic book covers or panels, you can then bring the story to life. It makes it more interesting and engaging for your audience. So these visuals not only help illustrate your main points, but also add emotional elements. So if you put something on there that people feel and like, you're drawing them in to the narrative there. So using visuals effectively, when it comes to using visuals effectively in recounting a narrative, there's a few key tips and techniques to keep in mind. First and foremost, it's important to choose visuals that support your message and to help convey a point. This might mean using charts and graphs to illustrate data, or encompassing images and videos that can bring your story to life. Another important consideration is using visuals to keep them simple and easy to understand. Avoid cluttering your slides with too much information, and make sure that the text or image you use clearly and easily to read. Finally, be sure that visual strategies throughout your presentation rather than relying on them too heavily. A well-placed image or chart can be incredibly effective in driving home a point, but too many visuals can quickly become overwhelming to your audience. So, the importance for timing. Now, I know that I'm a quick talker. I find it very difficult at times to slow things down because I try to get everything out all in one go. So I find timing difficult. But again, the importance of timing is crucial. So timing is a crucial element in re-encountering a narrative. It can make the difference between a story that falls flat and one that captures the audience. So I'm trying to breathe at the end of sentences. The timing of your delivery can affect emotional impact of your story. And again, the clarity of your message and even the level of engagement from your listeners. So for example, if you rush through key moments in your story, the audience is going to miss the significance, the most important parts. And on the other hand, if you're too linear or too long in the details, you risk losing them. So finding the right balance is really important. So tips for timing your narrative. Timing is crucial when it comes to re-encountering the narrative. By controlling the pace of your story, you can create suspension, build tension, and keep your audience engaged. One effective technique for timing your narrative is using pause and silence. This allows your audience time to process what you've said and anticipate for what's coming next. Another technique is to vary the speed and the intensity of your voice by speaking faster or speaking slower, louder or softer. You can emphasize the important points and create constraint between different points of your story. The role of emotion. So emotion plays a critical role in encountering or re-encountering a narrative. It is the way that you connect the audience through the storytelling. It makes them more interested. It brings people together. By tapping into emotion, you become more animated, and it's more engaging and more memorable for the listeners. So again, when I slide into storytelling mode, because I'm recalling something, you'll get the sense of what it was like to be there at that time. And that brings people onto the journey with you. So one way of incorporating emotions into your narrative is through that descriptive language. So giving much more detail into the bits that you want to draw them in on. By painting a vivid picture of the words, by invoking those feelings of joy, sadness, fear, or excitement within your audience. Another technique is to use personal anecdotes for within the story, and that relates to the topic at hand. That allows the listener to connect with the speaker on a deeper level and create a sense of empathy. So again, We don't want it to be all about you as the presenter and this is my life and blah, 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 blah. But if we can connect, it brings everything together. So there's little things that we can bring in to show people the sense that we understand. So for example, as apprentices, the tutor empathizing with you, understanding what it's like to have a full-time job, full-time study, family commitment, and to understand that sacrifice in which you make when you study to upskill yourself. But equally, being able to use their story or their narrative to help you through that journey is really important, because ultimately it helps bring everything to life. And the moment you know that they're on your side and you've connected, the more it is you're going to actively listen. So tips on conveying emotion in your narrative. Using that descriptive language to convey your message or your emotions, instead of simply saying something such as what happened, simply saying someone was happy. Describe their smile or their twinkle in their eye. So again, just being much more descriptive with the scenario. Using body language and facial expressions enhance the storytelling and makes eye contact with your audience. Use hand gestures to emphasize the importance. And again, you see me use my hands all the time. So the power of voice, using the power of your voice to re-encount the narrative. Pitch, tone is all important. It conveys those messages, those different feelings. Slow down, deliberate pace to create tension and suspension, and fast pace to create the tense of urgency. In addition to the way we speak, the volume of your voice can impact the narrative. So the louder your voice, that commands the attention and convey the authority, while speaking softer and quieter draws the intimacy and draws the audience in. So by conveying the power of your voice, you can effectively communicate your message with the audience. Tips for using your voice effectively. So speaking clearly and confidently can make words come across and project your voice. This will help you ensure that your audience can hear you and understand what you're saying. Using the emphasis and conveying emotion, looking at that tone, that pitch, and your voice can help you become more interesting and support what you're trying to say. It can help you convey the emotions behind the narrative. And again, politicians do that all the time. And if we go back to, so let's go back to here. And there, let's see.
But there is so much that is good about this country, so much to be proud of, so much to be optimistic about. I will shortly leave the job that it has been the honour of my life to hold. The second female Prime Minister, but certainly not the last. I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
So again, you can see there that convey of that emotion. So whether or not you agreed or disagreed with Theresa May, when she conveyed her emotion, that narrative, it brought it all together, and you had that sense, that feeling straight away to what she was trying to convey. So you could hear her peaks and her ups and downs, you could hear the quiver in the voice, and that just drew you in to what she was trying to convey. So the importance of practice. Practice makes perfect, of course it does. And it's especially true when you're recounting a narrative. So in your assessments, just make sure that you practice this before you go into it. The more you practice the storytelling, the more natural and confident you will become. So I wasn't a great, well, I'm still not really a great storyteller, but I have definitely improved over the years. I'm trying to get those peaks, those drops. I'm trying to do those dramatic pauses. And I do try and convey messages. I'm far more of a face-to-face person. I find this type of teaching a bit more difficult for me because I can't pick up the energy from the room. I can't pick up what people are thinking and feeling. So I have to kind of imagine it as I'm delivering this to try and make it more engaging. So again, the importance of practice there is key. And you can see, like when you're reading and trying to convey something, you trip up a couple of times. And that's fine, it happens, as long as you recover yourself, get yourself back on track. So top tips or tips for practicing your narrative. Practice makes perfect again, and it's especially true when it comes to re-encountering the narrative. One effective technique is to practice your story out loud. Record yourself, listen to it back to identify those areas that need improvement. So if you're doing a story, just listen to it and identify where you need those highs, those lows, those darks, the shades. And again, another helpful tip is to practice in front of the mirror. So practice in front of the mirror, you're able to use your body language and facial expressions. I use Zoom a lot, and obviously in Zoom, I can see myself on the camera. It gets a bit distracted at times, but it gives you an idea that I'm not like this. Hello, my name's Steve. I'm going to be your functional skills tutor. I'm trying to use my body language to pick up when I need to drop when I need to. So again, we're trying to convey those messages. Additionally, practice with family or friends, and obviously get feedback from them. So in conclusion, you've learned the importance of highlighting the main points of a narrative and recounting different contexts and situations. We've explored techniques in doing so effectively, including the use of visual, timing, emotions, and voice. By practicing these techniques, using them to convey the narrative and sequences, you can create powerful presentations and instructions that engage and inspire the audience. There we go, that's me trying to be all energetic, as I'm dying of a man flu, I'm sure. But storytelling is a powerful tool that can be used in many different contexts. Laughing at your own jokes, not good. Whether you're giving a presentation, providing instructions, or simply sharing those personal experiences, the ability to convey your message effectively can make all of the difference. So take time to practice your narrative, experiment, use different techniques, and most of all important, have fun with it. So question and answers. If you've got any question and answers, pop them in the discussion board or indeed pop them over in a message. Here's some additional resources. Again, I highly recommend the TED Talk. You're probably going to pick up the fact that I'm biased towards TED Talk. I'm not. I just find TED Talks, they just have everything in them that is great. They have the light, the dark, the happy, the sad. They bring you on an intense journey in such a short space of time, and that's what you want to do. So and they're great to mimic. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully that was useful. So let's now go back to our main screen. Bear with me, my mouse is now playing up. Good. So looking at lines of arguments and narratives, lines of arguments in the narrative. So you will need to understand and follow pairs, lines of arguments without getting lost. Within your own presentation, you will need to have a coherent narrative, which peers can follow. And you're assessed with your personal communication and spontaneity in communication. So your narrative then needs to make logical sense. In other words, a beginning, a middle, and an end. You have clear structure that makes it easier for the listener to understand your line of argument. So again, if we think about what we just covered, those key facts, then where it comes from, then the consequences, and then your recommendations. When listening to peers or presentations, do not get distracted by irrelevant information or emotive language unless it's a story there that's doing that. And then what you'll find useful is writing down the main points that you hear, and then obviously that helps you kind of do that dot join, kind of piecing together what it is that someone's trying to convey or their line of argument. So there's a worksheet here. If you want to work through the worksheet, that will help you highlight the main points of sequencing. So what somebody's doing. So again, you can use this to write down the main points. If you think about Theresa May, what we've just seen through there, what was she trying to convey in her main points? And again, so that worksheet's there for you. And we've then got additional readings, so beyond the classroom support tools here that we've created, which is then following the lines of your narrative or argument reading. And again, there, that looks at all the things around, you know, following those roles, analysing, looking at education, critical thinking skills, so a bit more there to support you. Okay, lovely. Well, hopefully that helps, and we will see you all in session 3. Bye for now.